ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Armchair Booking Wrestling Podcast. I'm your host. My name is Stunning Steve Barber. Joining me as always is my awesome co-host, the intellectual rock star himself, Delicious Dwaylon Davis.
Hey, everybody.
And we are getting really, really close to Thanksgiving. In fact, Thanksgiving is a week from today. Kind of snuck up on us.
Yeah, it's like, it's like, I feel like November just started and it's like, why is Thanksgiving next week?
Yeah. And especially doesn't help that people have been putting up their Christmas decorations since Labor Day. So,
We had ours up since Halloween because my wife wanted them up, so I put them up.
yep. So that's called, I want these up. And that becomes, it becomes part of the honeydew list.
Mm-hmm.
And, we actually usually don't get ours up until right after Thanksgiving.
Hope loves Halloween. So usually it's like November 1st. We decorate for Christmas. This year she wanted them up earlier, so I'm like, okay.
Kind of funny, you saying that Hope likes Halloween, but I see the shirt you're wearing is Halloween.
Yeah. Well, Hope loves Christmas. She's not a Halloween fan. I am Halloween all year long. So I did some DoorDash earlier and dropped it off, one off at the hospital, and the lady at the nurse's station was like, "I like your Halloween shirt there. Very festive." I'm like, "Yep. Yep. All year." Halloween never ends for me.
You know what? I could have grabbed my Friday the 13th shirt and put it on. But I won't, because I've already got my Mean Gene Okerlund shirt.
Mean Gene.
Yep. Got this one courtesy of one of the Wrestling Loot boxes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that I got at the last Fan Fest up in Chillicothe. And that's one thing I've done every Fan Fest, along with meeting wrestlers and spending way too much money to meet wrestlers.
Yeah.
I've also gotten 2 boxes every time.
Oh, okay.
One supposed to be one with a mask, one with a shirt. Well, this time they no longer have the masks. So I got 2 shirts, and this was one of the shirts.
Okay.
So, and I don't remember what the other one was. No idea where it is. but it's on here because it's got Mean by God Gene.
Yep. You got to put the by God in there or it doesn't work.
Yep. So, but since we are talking about holidays and now Thanksgiving May next week, our topic today actually it was a suggestion given to Dwaylon and myself by our friend Kyle, former co-host of the show, Kyle. And I actually thought about inviting him on for tonight, but I have a feeling he's preoccupied right now because as we are recording this, it's the Ravens and the Bengals.
Oh yeah, and he's not moving from that TV.
No, he's not going to be. He's because in case anybody didn't know, Kyle is a big Ravens fan, and so I know he's going to be focusing on that. So, but we are going to thank him for the topic because he actually he gave us this idea a couple of weeks ago, and I was like, what, as we get closer to Thanksgiving, that'll actually be a really good idea. So thank you, Kyle, for this idea. But we're talking about it. We're going to talk about the 3 things we're thankful for in wrestling, and I was like, man, because it almost seems like a hard topic, but then if you really think about it, because we're old, we know how things used to be in wrestling, back when we first started watching. Of course, anybody who's been watching for a long time knows it's not the same product as it was 40 years ago when we started watching. And it's not even the same as what it was 5 years ago, so but we just want to go over, the things that we are thankful for in wrestling, because this really is a time of Thanksgiving. For those listening in other countries, because we know we do have an audience in other countries, not every country has this kind of a holiday, where you literally are just spending time with your family, just giving thanks for what you have.
Right.
So that's one of the things that, we want to kind of hit on today. But I'll actually go first when it comes to wrestling, some of the things that I'm thankful for in wrestling. And honestly, I'm thankful that with wrestling, I've been able to become kind of part of it by being a podcaster, which means that get to have this podcast to talk about the sport that we love, which means I also get to do this with one of my best friends. And even before that, another one of my best friends who was from a coast, like I said, Kyle, who actually came up with the topic. So that's the first thing I'm thankful for is wrestling podcasting and the wrestling podcast family.
Right.
Because, and without wrestling, we wouldn't have, I'm not saying we never could have had a podcast, but this is really what, this is what we wanted to do.
Yeah, I agree. That's one of the things that I'm thankful for too, because without us doing this podcast, look at all the people that we've met in the business. Like,
yes.
And like, I mean, we interviewed Larry Zbyszko,
yeah.
living legend that we watched on TV growing up.
Yes.
And
hated.
Yeah. And yeah, he did such a good job as a heel that we hated him.
We hated him.
But he's such, he was such a good guy to talk to, and it was such a good time talking to him, and we would have never got that opportunity, or talking to Buff Bagwell, or talking to Wildcat Chris Harris, getting to know these people, all the wrestlers, all the other wrestlers, Big Strong Mims, Big Mama, Riley Matthews, the list goes on and on. Devin Graves,
and I know you knew Devin outside of wrestling, but
yeah,
but with him being a wrestler, though, it gave us an opportunity. We've had him on the show twice.
Yeah, Sinclair, who we've had on the show like at least three times.
Yeah,
and we would have never been able to talk to and become friends with all these people without this podcast.
Yep. I mean, we could name so many. Roger Ruffin. I mean, he's a legend in the business, and we had him on the show, and it's been wild having the chance to do all that, and we know we're not done, because I even got an email today from somebody, because like I said, folks, if you email us, and you want to come on the show, if you have a show idea, just send it to us.
Yeah.
And, and I promise I do look at the emails. Now, some of them I do have to make sure I flag the email so that way they don't get buried with all the other emails that come in, because that's actually happened and I've totally missed out on something. And so I always have to make sure I flag the emails now. Because unfortunately, email, I mean, you get spam once you sign up for one thing. Because I do have a couple of subscriptions with the Armchair Booking account, the Armchair Booking Podcast at gmail.com. And unfortunately, because I've signed up through at the TikTok with that account, so I get the emails from TikTok. And plus a couple others like IWTV, which is an app. That's what I can use to watch OVW on. Well, I get. I get emails from that all the time. And so unfortunately it's pushed emails that were sent to us.
Right.
So unless I flag them, star them, whatever on Gmail, I've had them get buried. And then I had, somebody, hey, I sent you an email. Why didn't you respond? I was like, crap, because it got pushed.
Because it got buried. Yeah.
It got buried. And yes, because I didn't, now I know, to flag them, to make sure we get them. But it was someone who emailed, and longtime fan. That's I'll just put it like that, and hopefully we can have him on the show at some point. Also, we're in talks with Finisher Wrestling about having them back on the show.
Yep.
Soon. So again,
another group of guys we would not have become friends with without this podcast.
Oh, them and BC Hunter, from Wrestling with the Truth, and Ted the Hillbilly Hill, and
Justin.
Justin Treno from TNC Sports Talk. Eric and Mike and friends from the Dad World Order podcast.
Yep.
I'm even thankful for people like Noah Gabriel, who decided to blow his nose on our shirt. So, but yeah, so, and also thankful for our friends like Justin and like Randy. Both of them have been able to step in, and helped out when they wanted to make sure we kept it going. So, well, that's the first thing I'm thankful for. How about yourself?
That's one of the things I'm thankful for. Another thing I'm thankful for is all of the wrestling outside of WWE, because there's so many places for professional wrestlers to ply their trade now. because without your AEW and your Impact, and I mean Ring of Honor, which Tony Khan owns both, but Ring of Honor is kind of like their NXT.
Mhm.
And so without those companies, without New Japan Pro Wrestling Gorilla, you know, things of that nature, things would be what I like to call the dark ages, where after WWE bought WCW and they had already purchased all the intellectual property of ECW, there was nowhere for anybody to go.
Right.
And that, I mean, it made the WWE product stagnant. Vince tried to say a month or two ago that the reason he sold the company was because it had become stagnant. No, it was stagnant after he bought WCW.
Yeah.
Because he had no competition. But now there are other alternatives to the WWE machine. Now, I don't want people to think that I hate the WWE. That's far from the case. I like WWE. I
Yeah.
watch the pay-per-views every month. I grew up with it, but it's not the only game in town.
Right.
There's
Especially since most of the stuff that we even talk about is WWE, because they
yeah,
are
yeah,
the biggest game in
they're
town. It's hard not to.
yeah, yeah. They're no pun intended, but they're the big show. I
Yeah.
mean, they're the biggest wrestling company in the world, but they're not the only one. And that's
Exactly.
what I like is the variety, because you can watch AEW and get one style. You can even watch their Ring of Honor TV and get a different style. Impact gives you a different style. New Japan gives you a different style. And that's what I love about wrestling is it's not the same cookie cutter thing all the time.
Right.
So I love that. I'm very thankful that we have all these opportunities to watch other types of wrestling available to us.
And that kind of leads me on something else, and it kind of piggybacks off of that. Is one of the things that I'm thankful for is the fact that we have so many independent companies now.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Because tomorrow night I'm planning on going and watching a show from the company. It's a company out of Cincinnati. We've talked about them before, called Spot Monkey Promotions.
Yes.
And they are doing a show in Georgetown, Ohio, which
Okay.
is just right down the road from it's actually the county seat of Brown County, where I live. And they are having it at the high school. Actually, I think they're another one that it's the high school / middle school, but or no, maybe not. It doesn't matter. But they're having it to raise money for the Georgetown High School athletic department.
Mm-hmm.
And the guest of honor, who was doing a meet and greet, and I've actually already met him before, which makes me think, oh my God, I've done a lot of meet and greets. So now I come back around, it's Jimmy Mouth of the South Heart again.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So he's going to be there, along with Lord Crew, along with Carson Drake, along with Riley Matthews. She's going to be there.
Mm-hmm.
So and Riley, by the way, she's been doing a lot of shows, not just NWF.
Yes, she has.
She's been going down hitting up OVW, and then she's going to be in Georgetown tomorrow. Which Riley, she's putting a lot of miles in her car, because OVW down in Louisville, I mean, that's a good hour and a half, 2 hour drive from
Yeah.
Cincinnati. And in fact, I mean, I know the town she lives in is not, she doesn't live in Cincinnati proper. She lives in another town, kind of, well, it's probably a little bit closer to Cincinnati than what Mount Orb is. But I mean, she puts in a little bit of a haul to get down to Louisville, and then coming back up and working, her regular job on
Yeah.
Friday, and then turn around and having, match tomorrow night in Georgetown. So yeah, she's gone all over the place. But thankful for, these indie companies that we can watch. And,
Mm-hmm.
like you said, I mean, it's almost like what you were saying, other things other than WWE. But this is even going down, this is entry level. Yeah, now it's
Mm-hmm.
not backyard wrestling. Now I'm not going to go that far, but
No, but it's where wrestlers get especially with the NWF, because of Roger Ruffin and Big Mama and Wildcat Chris
Mm-hmm.
Harris, the training that they get is exceptional.
Mm-hmm.
So when you have an independent company that gives you know, their students that kind of training, it makes the wrestling world better because you're getting people who know the correct way to wrestle and the correct way to protect themselves and their opponent when they're
Mm-hmm.
in the ring.
And I don't think people get really think about that too much as far as, yeah, you're always, I mean, your first instinct is always going to be to protect yourself.
Mm-hmm.
However, the ones who protect their opponents,
Yeah.
I mean, we saw prime example that one of the biggest news stories coming out of Crown Jewel was Logan Paul catching Rey Mysterio, keeping him from breaking his neck.
Yeah, and here's something about Logan Paul too that he's not getting enough credit for is his humility as far as his place in pro wrestling and who he's been in the ring with. He said that he said that was on both of them. He said his part of it, he said he doesn't think Ray got enough spring off the rope, which we talked about that. That's what we thought.
Mm-hmm.
He said that's just what he's thinking happened because of the way Ray came off the rope. But he said that he was out of position. And he fully admitted that. He's like,
Mm.
I was not close enough to for him to hit the move like he was supposed to. He's like, but when I saw him about to land on his head, he's like, I knew I had to catch him because one, that's just a decent thing to do. He's like, and two, I'm in the ring with Rey Mysterio. I can't, just let him drop on his head. And he's like, so, he's like, my instinct was not what's the next spot, but my instinct was let me save the person I'm in the ring with.
Yep.
Let me protect them. He's like, so that's why I caught him because otherwise it would have went really bad. But he was very humble about that and took accountability for his part of not being exactly in position for the move.
And he has become a student of the game, no doubt.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So, I mean, I don't know what his legacy will be, at the end of the day. However, I mean, he's actually, I mean, I'd say it's more net positive than negative.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Because, I mean, when we heard Logan Paul, we're like, oh,
Yeah.
really?
I just groaned, but then I saw him perform, and I've seen him live when he was when he wrestled the Miz at SummerSlam,
That's right. You
and
did.
I mean the dude's got presence. He knows. Like then he was playing the face, but he's such a good heel. He
Yeah.
he knows, and he knows how to get that heel reaction, especially because he's got so many people that as far as his social media goes that can't stand him anyway. So he just feeds into that persona and brings it into the ring. So I mean, he's well beyond his years of experience. He gets it. He's one of those wrestlers that have walked into the business and just gets it.
Which is kind of ironic because he's going against the Miz, because a lot of people always looked at the Miz like he's just a celebrity because he was
Mm-hmm.
on Real
Yeah.
World. Then he went through Tough Enough, and the Miz, I mean, he's the real deal. I mean, he's paid his dues,
Oh yeah, definitely.
So, but he's the Miz is another one. Just people just like to hate him.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, I'll boo him if he's a heel, but I'm not going to boo his abilities.
No, I'm not booing his abilities. I never agree with them turning him face. He's just one of those. He's a natural heel.
He is so good as a heel.
I mean, he is a natural heel, and it's like you can tell he struggles as a face. You can tell it's easier for him to be a heel
Mm-hmm.
because there's so many levels he can feed into the heel persona that he can't do as a face.
Um, you can't be extremely cocky
Yeah,
and be a
yeah,
face.
yeah,
And then, I mean, he just points out, look, I'm a TV star.
yeah,
Okay, I did good on Tough, and I did this. Now look at my hot smoking wife,
exactly.
and you're like,
And it's like
I hate that guy.
Because I hate that guy.
So, you know,
And it's like, but he's such a natural heel. He's like Charlotte. Charlotte should never be face, ever.
exactly.
She should be a heel
Just like
all
her
the
dad.
time, just like her dad.
Yep.
Flair should have never been a face any time in his career. It was okay for fans to cheer him, even though he was a heel, because they did it, especially when he was in the Horsemen in their heyday. Horsemen got cheered and booed at the same time.
Yep.
Because people hated their tactics, but they respected their skills.
What is your next thing that you're thankful for in wrestling?
Piggybacking off of Ric Flair and the Horsemen, I'm, of course, I'm a '70s baby. I grew up,
Exactly.
watching, I grew
we
up,
did.
yeah, grew up watching wrestling with my grandmother and grew up watching the Horsemen. And I am thankful for the Four Horsemen because I'm a fan of factions. And without the Four Horsemen, there would be no true, because they were the first true faction, first true group that worked together and everything.
Yes.
Because most of the time you had just a bunch of guys that were managed by one person.
Right.
Even Bobby Heenan, when he had the Heenan family, they weren't necessarily one cohesive group.
They didn't go out for interviews together. They didn't
Exactly.
accompany each other to the
To the
ring.
ring,
Yeah.
exactly. So you had the Heenan family, which was excellent. There's Hall of Famers. The majority of the Heenan family are Hall of Famers, but they weren't a true faction. Just like the original Legion of Doom was the Road Warriors and Jake the Snake Roberts, but it was, and I forget who else was in it for
The
the life of me.
spoiler and Bundy.
Yes, Bundy, yeah, and the spoiler. But it was just a group of guys that happened to be managed by the same person.
Right.
But then you get the Horsemen, who is a group of guys that do interviews together, they travel together, you know, they watched each other's back, they accompanied each other to the ring, they protected each other's championships. They were a true faction. Without them, there's no NWO, there's no DX, there's no Shield, no Wyatt family, you know, on and on. There's none of that, even going as far as over in Japan with Bullet Club and, you know, all their little splinter groups and things like that. There would be no true factions without the Horsemen. They were the blueprint of what a faction should be. So I'm thankful for the Horsemen.
And I was even thinking about all um the factions groups that Kevin Sullivan had.
Yeah.
Because before the Horsemen, though, he had his, what they were called, the Flock, weren't they? Just Kevin Sullivan, his Flock down in Florida.
Yeah, it's like that was just the name that
But
the announcers gave them, but it wasn't
right,
like
but they weren't.
official thing. But they weren't a cohesive unit either. It was just people who
and
were under the influence of Kevin Sullivan.
and they didn't dominate all the titles either.
Right, right.
And so they're looking for the name, because I mean he was called the Prince of Darkness, and I'm like, okay,
Yeah,
first of all, that's Ozzy Osbourne. I don't know
yeah.
what you're thinking. But yeah, I mean, but then he also had the Dungeon of Doom, which of course came after the Horsemen, but they were still nowhere near the level. I mean, the
I
Dungeon of
mean,
Doom felt like a bunch of cast-offs, but
yeah, because they
even though,
were.
yeah, it
I
shouldn't
mean,
have
they
been,
really
but
were. Yeah, because you took everybody that pretty much Dungeon of Doom, like at its core, was either new guys like Hugh Morris and the Giant, or guys that WCW's creative had failed, like uh, Bruce Beefcake, like Earthquake, like I'm trying to think who else. There was somebody else, I can't think of it, but I mean the only star in that group was when Lex Luger was affiliated with them for a time.
well, he was,
When
wasn't he?
yeah, when they first started.
And then he had
And
the Varsity Club was cool. I like them,
I do
but
like the Varsity Club. Yeah, I love the Varsity Club. But again, they were, without the Horsemen, we probably wouldn't have had the Varsity Club. because they
Uh,
were a cohesive unit,
yeah, they
and
were.
they accompanied each other to the ring and did interviews together and things like that. They took that Horseman blueprint and used it for their faction. But the
Uh,
Horsemen are still top of the food chain.
Sullivan was the Army of Darkness.
Okay.
Yep. And because I was thinking Ministry, no, it wasn't Ministry of Darkness. That was an Undertaker, but I knew it was something similar to that. I just not found, yeah, the Army of Darkness. Um, but yeah, you're right. I mean, without the Horsemen, you wouldn't have had even some of the less known ones. Well, sort of like the oddities. Now, the oddities were like the Dungeon of Doom, except for they were WWE. In fact, they even had John Cena in both of them.
Yeah. Yep.
In fact, Luna Vachon, she was in
Yeah.
the oddities. Luna
Yep.
Vachon was also in the Army of Darkness.
Yes. Yes, she was. Yep.
Um, and yeah, so like you said, you're thinking for the Horsemen because everything after them will always be compared to the Horsemen.
Yeah.
You know, even oh my lord, why I'm just not drawing a blank, and we literally just spoke to one of the members of this faction when Larry Zabesco.
The Dangerous Alliance.
Dangerous Alliance, yes,
Mm-hmm.
very underrated because they were controlling the titles at the time because
Yeah.
the Horsemen, of course, Arn Anderson was in the Dangerous Alliance,
Yep.
so you
I
weren't going to
mean,
have you can't have the Horsemen without Arn Anderson.
yeah. And the Dangerous Alliance, I mean, like you said, they're very underrated. They controlled the World Television title, the World Tag Team titles in two different variations because you had Arn Anderson and Larry Zbyszko as the enforcers when they were World Tag Team champions. And then they lost the belts. And then, Zbyszko gets brought in. And then Arn and Bobby Eaton win the World Tag Team title. Rick Rude is the United States Heavyweight Champion. So, I mean, they controlled every title basically except the world title.
Yeah, and um, so one of the last thing that because we had to come up with three, but one of the things this may throw a curveball for people. I'm thankful for the things I have learned about real life from watching and keeping up with professional wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
Because one of the things, because I think it was your wife, Hope, who actually has said wrestling is the greatest one take actors, the greatest
Yes.
collection of one take actors in the world.
Yep. She
You
says that all the time because she's like, what other actors have to do what they do in one take? Everybody else, you know, if they mess up, it just gets edited out or whatever in post production. But wrestlers they have to know their part and be able to do it one time.
Yep. And I'll admit there were some words I learned from Gorilla Monsoon.
Yeah, me too.
The word blatant.
Yeah.
Will always know that I learned that from watching WWF
Yeah.
Because Gorilla Monsoon, he had such a vast vocabulary.
Mm-hmm.
But the word double standard, the phrase insulting our intelligence, because I used to see that all the time in the wrestling magazines. Learned that from watching wrestling. Then when we found out the nature of it, I will still never say it's fake just because too many people are getting hurt. You can say it's predetermined. Hey, cool, that's fine. But
yeah, but there's nothing fake about it.
No. But when you start learning the kayfabe nature of it all, kayfabe, that's another term, and how far they went, and so you'll learn the lengths people will go to protect their business.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, you know what? I could definitely take that as some inspiration, because they were protecting the business they were in. And then, you start learning about workplace politics. Yes, you can learn about that from keep it up. And now that you'll learn from like watching or listening to a podcast like ours, or when we've actually talked to wrestlers, or you listen to other podcasts. But when you keep up with those kind of things, and you learn about, okay, that's why Honky Tonk Man had the Intercontinental Belt for so long, because of who he was friends with.
Yep, because he was buddies with that doesn't work for me, brother.
Yeah. Yeah, and then you find out why Hogan never wrestled Rick Rude, and you find out why Hogan never wrestled, some other ones, and like why he never defended the title against Jake the Snake. And
Never refused to refused to defend it and drop it to Bret Hart, because the
right,
original plan was, Yokozuna beats Bret at WrestleMania 9, then Hogan comes in Hogan sneaks in the back door, ends up winning the title, the because he was supposed to have a program with Bret Hart and put Bret Hart over, and Hogan said that didn't work for him, so he ended up losing it back to Yokozuna.
oh, so many things that people just don't get because people look down on wrestling. People who don't
Mm-hmm.
watch wrestling, look down on it, or they refuse to watch it. Because one of the things I was mentioning before, about the show that's going to be in Georgetown, Ohio tomorrow night, is to raise money for the athletic department for that high school.
Mm-hmm.
A few months ago, of course, when I met EC3, that was in Williamsburg, at Williamsburg High School / middle school. That one I know was a combo, and once again to raise money for the athletic department. In fact,
Mm-hmm.
even their football coaches get involved with it because 2 years in a row I went to
Yeah.
their show. And last year, the football coach, he's either football or wrestling, but I think it's one of the football coaches. He actually body slammed one of the wrestlers.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and this one he did a shoulder tackle and something else, and so they actually get into it. I don't know what to expect for the show in Georgetown,
Mm-hmm.
um, but they're raising money, like I said, for the athletic department.
Right.
However, the school district that we live in, the one that well, my son is no longer going to school. We actually homeschool our son because of how bad this district has gotten.
Mm-hmm.
Um, when I spoke to the school board about the things that happened to my son and how they refuse to even acknowledge they have a problem, well, I was in the lobby actually talking with the athletic director for the school district, and the wrestling coach happened to also be in the lobby as well. And I kind of mentioned that, oh, yeah, by the way, I have a wrestling podcast because I think that was on a Monday night. And so I said, yeah, I need to make sure I get home in time so we can record. And yeah, then I detected very quickly they do not like professional wrestling. And in
Mm-hmm.
fact, I've actually heard the athletic director hates professional wrestling. I could tell the wrestling coach did,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and there have been talks before about having events in that high school gym,
Mm-hmm.
and they refuse.
Mm.
And he said, well, they scuff up the gym floor. It's like, no, because they put mats down
Yeah.
underneath the ring to keep it from
Uh-huh.
tearing it up.
Yeah.
No, he just doesn't like wrestling, is what it comes down to.
Mm-hmm.
So people like that, who look down upon it, it's like you realize all the things you could learn besides wrestling. You learn about like competition. You learn,
Yeah.
the difference between, okay, that person, they're booing them because they don't like their character, or they're booing them because they don't like them. They got that go
Yeah.
away heat,
Yeah.
but those are the kind of things that you can learn if you keep up with professional wrestling. And because
Yeah.
there are so many people from so many backgrounds,
Mm-hmm.
that come in, and all of a sudden you're learning about countries that now whether or not the wrestler is actually from that country, that's another
Right.
story. But because Killer Khan was not from Mongolia,
Right.
he was Japanese.
Yeah.
The Great Kabuki was also, he wasn't from, I think they said he was from Singapore because it makes it sound more exotic. No, he was
Mm-hmm.
also Japanese.
Yeah.
The Russians weren't Russian. Ivan
Right.
Koloff was Canadian.
Yeah.
Nikita Koloff was from Minnesota.
Yep.
Khrushchev, also from Minnesota. He didn't even try to hide his accent.
Yeah.
um, but then, Nikolai Volkov was actually not from Russia, but he was from Croatia.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, you learn about these different things as a kid. You're like, wow,
Yeah.
there's a country. Well, okay, let me, check all that out. So that's one of the things I've been kind of thankful for, a lot of the things that I've learned, over the years of watching wrestling.
And my third one, which kind of piggybacks off yours, is I am thankful for the quality wrestling commentators that we've had over the years. Like like you were saying, Gorilla Monsoon, who was so knowledgeable about. He just had such a huge vocabulary, and not just that he knew big words to throw out. He knew the meaning of those words and how to use them properly. He knew the medical terms of the different body parts that the wrestlers
Mm-hmm.
were working. Um, you can't talk about wrestling commentators without talking about Jim Ross, who I still think is the best to ever do it. Jim Ross made you feel those big moments. It's like you knew they were big moments, but when you heard Jim Ross announce, talk about them during the match, he made everything feel so important. Like Austin winning the world title at WrestleMania. And that's still the soundbite that you hear when he's like, Austin, Stone Cold, because he made you feel that that was a huge moment, not just for that event, but for wrestling as a whole. And there's so many huge wrestling moments that Jim Ross is tied to. And it's like it's hard to separate the two. His announcing at Hell in a Cell '98 between The Undertaker and
I was
Mankind
about to say that. Dear God,
is,
they broken him in half.
yeah, but I mean, if you want to know how to be a wrestling announcer,
That's what you do.
put that match on. Don't even pay attention to the match. Just sit there and listen to Jim Ross. The emotion that he gives and the concern, the true concern that he conveys for Mick Foley in that match, you know, made me feel the exact same way. Even, I'd seen it, but it's like almost like a car crash. Like, I can't believe what I just saw. But then Jim Ross talking about it made you understand the gravity of it. And with him, I just think there'll never be another. Bobby the Brain Heenan was amazing. He gave you the comedy side, but he also gave you a manager's aspect of it. Looking through a manager's eyes, and also looking through somebody who's been in the ring.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people forget or don't know Bobby Heenan used to wrestle before he became a manager.
They always said he wrestled like a manager and he managed like a wrestler.
Yeah.
That's what made him so good. And then, of course,
Oh yeah.
the commentating. Bobby Heenan was a lot of the stuff he came up with just right off the cuff. I mean, it was
Yeah.
so just impromptu.
Like, and yes, as iconic as a duo as Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler are, there's still no better combination than Gorilla Monsoon and Bobby Heenan. Them on commentary together was fantastic. It
Mm-hmm.
was it was must listen. It's like, sometimes I was paying more attention to what they were saying than to what was going on in the ring, because they always kept me entertained. And then you've got newer guys. You've got Nigel McGuinness, who used to be a wrestler. He was Ring of Honor world champion, Ring of Honor pure champion. He's been an announcer for WWE, both versions of NXT, Ring of Honor. He's now a color commentator on AEW Collision on Saturdays. Kevin Kelly, who I first saw Kevin Kelly in WWE in mid '90s. He was a backstage interviewer, and then he left later on and ended up going to Ring of Honor and become their main announcer, and he was fantastic. Went to New Japan. Now he's into AEW also on Collision. Excalibur is fantastic. Um, he's so knowledgeable, and he's also a former wrestler who understands the business from the inside, and also, it's refreshing for me in this day and age to hear somebody explain the holds that the wrestlers are using in the ring,
Yep.
and why they're using them, because WWE had gotten so far away from that. It's like Joey Styles said it on it was like a scripted shoot that he did on Raw one night, and he's like, you know, we don't get to say wrestlers, we have to say superstars. We don't get to call the moves in the ring that these men and women have, put their bodies through hell to learn and perfect. We don't even get to call the moves that they're doing.
What a maneuver.
Exactly. And it's refreshing to hear guys like Kevin Kelly and Nigel McGuinness and Excalibur explain those moves. You got a legend like Taz on commentary, who's done commentary for WWE, TNA, and now AEW, who explains the moves and why they're being done, what body parts are being affected, and things like that. You've got the brilliant Tony Schiavone, who has always been great. It's just I'm thankful for great announcers, great commentators, because for the television presentation of it, it goes hand in hand. If you don't have a good commentator that can add to the story that they're telling in the ring, then the match will be good because the talent's there, but it won't be nearly as interesting because you have these people explaining the backstory of a lot of what's going on in the ring.
And yeah, because I was just thinking about, some of the older announcers that, we grew up like Bob Caudle.
Bob Caudle. Yeah.
Yeah, always like Bob Caudle. David Crockett, he could get a little too excited at times, but I mean,
he could, but I mean,
it still made the shows. I mean, you knew that
yeah.
he was all about the good guys. Bob Caudle
Oh, yeah.
was more neutral, but David Crockett was all about the good guys, and you could tell. He even took a Russian sickle from Nikita.
Yeah.
So
Jesse the Body Ventura was an excellent commentator in WWF and WCW.
Jesse the Body, who has, man, you look at all the stuff on his resume.
Yeah. Wrestler, announcer, governor of Minnesota,
mayor of whatever town that was. Then has his own, not a talk show, but his own. And, I don't know what you call his show.
And I know he's ex-military. Was he a Navy SEAL?
He was a budsman, like a he wasn't a SEAL, but he was like on the demolition team who worked alongside them a lot of times.
Okay.
But he did some stuff. I mean, he was
being on the demo team for the Navy is enough.
Yeah. He and from what I understand, he went to Vietnam. So, I mean, he is a Vietnam vet. So, so, I mean, there's, so many ones out there, but the ones that, you mentioned are the ones that really, really stand out, like a Shivani, like a Ross, Gordon Soley was another one.
Yeah.
And, very thankful because if it wasn't for them, and that's one thing I do miss when I go to a live event, you can't exactly,
hear
the commentary, but
that's like at SummerSlam, and my wife was like, "This is weird with no commentary."
It is, so, but that's why the indie wrestlers, why they are really working on their craft, because they don't have,
they've got to tell the entire story.
Yep.
So,
but so that covers all the things we're thankful for in wrestling. And, Kyle also said the things we're just thankful for in general. And yes, this is kind of going away from wrestling, but I could tell you the three things. Obviously, my family.
Yep.
Same. Very thankful for my friends. Obviously, Dwaylon's one of my best friends in the world, has been for over 3 decades now. And yes, we can say that because we're that old. Our friendship is old. And both of us just turned 50 in the past few months, and so we're both half a century old, and so our friendship has gone over 60% of the time that we've been on the face of this planet. So I'm very thankful for my family, of course my wife, my kids, thankful for all my friends. And the third one, I mean, that's sometimes it's kind of a hard one because you feel like you're leaving stuff out. Because I also served in the military for 20 years, but I also kind of think, well, you know what? We're free. we're free. I mean, even if we don't agree with each other, we're free to disagree without, causing like too bad of a conflict where somebody's going to get put in jail because we don't agree. So I'm very, very grateful and thankful for that. And the thankful that we can have Thanksgiving.
Right. Like you, I'm extremely thankful for my family, my wife, my kids, my soon to be next kid, next April. I am extremely thankful for mine and Steve's friendships. I've always said I have a lot of acquaintances, but not a lot of true friends. But Steve has been a true friend since day one. And so I've always been very thankful for our friendship. And the last one is I'm just thankful. I am thankful for therapy because therapy has helped me a lot in getting my mental health back in check, of understanding things about myself, understanding how to let certain things go and not obsess about them. And I'm in a very good place these days, and I couldn't have been there without therapy. So I'm extremely thankful for therapy.
And if anybody thinks, well, I shouldn't go to therapy, only weak people go to therapy. No. I had a commander one time, and I've mentioned this on the show before. My former squadron commander, in fact, her name was Ginger Wallace. She was a lieutenant colonel at the time. And she said in one of our commanders' calls, she said, seeking help, reaching out for help, saying you need help. She's like, it's not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of strength.
The strongest thing you can do.
Yeah. To admit, hey, I can't do this on my own.
Yeah.
So saying that you need help, she said, it is a sign of strength.
Yeah. I mean, I struggled for years with my mental health, trying to take care of it myself and not wanting to admit that it had gotten as bad as it had gotten. And then finally I was like, I can't do it by myself anymore. I've got to have some help. And it helped quite a bit.
Oh yeah. And and when people talk about friendships, there was a period of time Dwaylon and I had actually lost touch for a little bit because we had lost touch. I was in Maryland and you had like just moved. And this was before everybody, obviously it was before social media. But I didn't even have an email address yet. The last time we had seen each other, I established a Hotmail address later. But I think you had just moved and we had just lost touch. And I think I had ran into your brother, and I think he said, I'll see if I can get a hold of him, because he didn't want to just give your phone number, which I understood that, and so, but then he didn't have any way of getting hold of me. So we didn't actually get back in touch. Let's see, that was in around 97, late 96, 97, last time we'd seen each other. We didn't get back in touch until Facebook became a thing.
Yes.
And so it was 15 years later, maybe.
Yeah, because let's see.
Or maybe it was around 2007, 2008.
Yeah, I think I signed up for Facebook about 2000. Yeah, 2007, 2008.
Yeah, so it's like 10, 11 years later.
Yeah.
And we picked right back up.
Right back up.
Yeah, and that's the thing, about friendships, that you can go for months without talking to each other. You can go for years, obviously, without talking to each other. Doesn't mean the friendship ends.
No, and if the friendship is real, then it never dies.
Right, because we didn't stop talking just because we were mad at each other. We just lost touch because
life.
Life. I moved, you moved at the same time. And
like you said, it wasn't as easy to keep in touch as it is now.
Right.
Because now we do have social media and smartphones and things like that. I mean, we literally carry around a computer in our pocket every day.
I do.
And
it's right here, and with the case that says armchair booking, you can get one of those at tpublic.com/users/armchair-booking-podcast. Just saying, just putting it out there. All right.
But, it's just, back then it's like if you didn't know the person's address or telephone number, that was,
You were hosed.
yeah, that was it. You had no other way of getting in touch with them. And for us to have been friends for as long as we've had, because I mean, we've been friends since 1989.
Yeah, late 89, our junior year of high
Late,
school.
yeah, late
Yeah.
89. We've been friends almost 35 years.
Yep. So, um, yeah. Wow.
Yeah,
So 3.5 decades, and and then we just keep collecting friends to kind of add to it,
yeah,
along
yeah,
the way.
yeah.
Oh, and I do want to give a shout out because I saw you had posted this. You didn't mention on the last podcast that we did 2 days ago. After um, I shut everything down, everything was processed, and I was looking on Facebook, and I saw your brother got an award,
Yes, he did. Yep.
and it was from. Oh, well, you know what? I'll let you go ahead and explain
He
the.
got he got an award for from the Boys and Girls Club. It was just like, like outstanding performance and things like that. It's like he has done just an amazing. He has completely turned around the Boys and Girls Club in Hopkinsville. It is such a good place for kids to go after school and during the summer and things like that. And you know, they're they learn things there. It's not just a place to house these kids while their parents are at work or their parents don't want to be bothered or whatever. It's like they learn things so that they can take that out into the world and be able to make a future for themselves. And my brother, who's the director of the Boys and Girls Club in Hopkinsville, is just phenomenal in that role. He's like, he loves those kids and gives everything he's got to make sure that it is the best possible facility for kids to go to, for them to have a safe place, safe space to go to.
Is it up by the fairgrounds?
No, it's on Walnut Street.
Okay.
It's over by DA, over by Durrett Avenue.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
So yeah, they definitely needed a little bit
yeah,
of um
yeah.
yeah, Durrett Avenue, for those who aren't from Hopkinsville, Kentucky, Durrett Avenue was um kind of a
It's a
rough
rough neighborhood.
it's a rough
Yeah,
neighborhood. Yeah.
uh,
They had the DA dogs. I don't even know if they're still around or not, but
I don't either. But yeah, he has done a lot of great things, and he's well deserved of the awards that he gets.
and if anybody who knows Dwaylon, you go on his Facebook, you can actually see, he posted the link to it, to the news story about it,
Hmm.
and you can see a picture of Terrence. Terrence is huge. I mean,
Terrence is my quote unquote baby brother. He is 5 years younger than me, but I am, I'm 6 feet tall, 234 pounds. He will not tell me his weight, but he is a big man, and he is also 6'6".
oh, he's over 350.
Yeah,
Got to be.
but he is solid and he is broad. And if I'm standing in front of him and somebody's standing behind him, you cannot see me at all.
Oh, so
My wife has told me that. She's like, you and Terrence were standing there talking, and she's like, and I couldn't see you at all.
so you're the
She's like,
older
I heard
brother.
you.
You're the older brother.
Yeah,
He's the big brother.
exactly. Yeah.
And so that may be why the neighborhood's cleaned up. Terrence just walks outside and looks around. Y'all gonna calm down?
Yeah. It's like, is there a problem here? What's going
Uh,
on?
no,
No.
no, Tiny. Oh. That that ought to be his nickname, Tiny Terrence.
All the kids just call him Mr. Terrence.
I don't blame him. That about if I'm able to see him again, which is funny because even though my wife, she doesn't remember it, she's actually met Terrence.
That's right.
At
Yep.
the my sister's wedding reception. So,
Yep.
but those are the things that we're thankful for in wrestling. Those are the things that and we only named 3 things that we're thankful for in life. Obviously, there's a lot more, but those are the
Yeah.
3 that definitely come to mind. Um, and
Excuse me.
also kind of thankful for. I mean, opportunities to help the show grow,
Yep.
because we are looking at a lot of things. And in fact, the gentleman who emailed us, hopefully, he's watching this, so he can email back. Because I actually emailed him back, and I courtesy copied you as well.
Yeah, it was a busy day. I hadn't had a chance to
Oh
read
yeah.
it yet.
And he also has a YouTube channel.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, he's been a wrestling fan for a while. So he could probably tell us some things, and we'll be taking notes, going, really? I want to, let's,
Yeah, yeah.
So he's probably forgotten more than what we'll ever know. And we know a lot, especially Dwaylon. He is the walking, talking encyclopedia of professional wrestling. And we need to have a t-shirt made that says that. But next week, obviously, we've talked about more than likely Monday, we're going to be doing a review or a preview of Survivor Series.
Yep.
Because it's happening on Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
Rest of the week obviously is very busy because we have Thanksgiving, and then I have another wrestling thing for the NWF that I'm going to on Friday.
Yeah.
But it's but it really is, Thanksgiving is definitely a day for spending with family.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'll be thankful to be able to do that. My daughter's supposed to come in from university. Hopefully, she doesn't have to work over the weekend because she has a job now up in Dayton.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so hopefully, she doesn't have to work over the weekend, so she can stay down here a little bit longer than just a day.
Yeah.
So, but either way, until we can speak again, my friend, for those of you who may not be listening next week, definitely have a good Thanksgiving. And I'll say it again.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we record again. Have a good Thanksgiving. Even if you're not American, you're from a different country, have a good Thanksgiving anyway.
Yep.
Spend time with your family. That's really what's all about.
All
Giving
about.
thanks. Yeah, giving thanks and kind of take a break and calm down, and just know that Mariah Carey, she's thought out. You're going to start hearing the music on the radio. So
yeah, I've already heard it in the stores, and it's like just I can't. I can't.
Haven't heard it yet. I'm pretty sure it'll be soon. I hear and
It's like I'm trying to enjoy I'm just trying to live my life and enjoy myself. And here comes Mariah Carey jumping off the top rope with a double axe handle, like singing her song. It's like, no, leave me alone.
Leave me alone. I don't care if what you want for Christmas is me. No.
Exactly.
It sounds like human trafficking. We don't want that.
Exactly. Leave me alone.
See,
go away.
Yeah. See, now that's going to make people think twice about that song.
Yep.
See. But either way, until we can meet again, my friend, good night and God bless.
God bless.